The story of King Leopold of Belgium and the Congo is one of the most obscure human disasters in recorded history. King Leopold laid claim to the vast region of Congo as his own personal property. His drive to extract wealth from the subjugated land caused a genocide that historians don't talk about enough. When Leopold was finally forced to relinquish the Congo to the Belgian state, 10 million people already died in the Congo Free State. In this video, we explore the Belgian royal reign over the Congo and how its brutality reached new lows even by European colonial standards. The second child of King Louis Philippe of France's daughter Louise and the current monarch of Belgium, Leopold was born in Brussels on April 9, 1835. As a consequence of the events of the French Revolution in 1848, his maternal grandfather, Louis Philippe, was driven out of France and settled in the United Kingdom. Louis Philippe passed away in 1850, 2 years after his reign ended. The death of Leopold's father had a significant impact on Leopold's mother, whose health had already been in a fragile state when his father passed away. The year Leopold turned 15, she passed away from tuberculosis. Due to the fact that Leopold II's father and Queen Victoria's mother shared the same ancestor, the Belgian king and the British monarch were distantly related, as first cousins once removed. Leopold married Mary Henriette of Austria on August 22, 1853, when he was only 18 years old. Marie Henriette was a descendant of the late Holy Roman Emperor Leopold II, and a cousin of Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria. The wedding took place in Brussels. Marie Henriette was a lively and energetic individual, and she won the hearts of the people through her goodness and spirit. Because of her stunning good looks, people referred to her as the Rose of Brabant. In addition to being a gifted pianist, she was also an accomplished artist. Her passion for horseback riding was so strong that she always made sure to provide extra care and attention to her horses. Some people made jokes about the marriage of a stableman and a nun, with the latter term referring to Leopold because his reserved and quiet demeanor. The marriage resulted in 4 children: Prince Leopold, Duke of Brabant, 3 daughters, and 1 boy. The younger Leopold, who had fallen into a pond, had pneumonia and suddenly died in 1869 when he was only 9 years old. The death of his son caused King Leopold a lot of grief. The couple had one more unsuccessful attempt to conceive a male, which resulted in the birth of their last daughter, Clementine. After that, the marriage deteriorated to the point where the pair decided to divorce. Marie Henriette relocated permanently to Spa in 1895 and lived there until her death in 1902. Leopold kept a lot of mistresses. He took 16-year-old French prostitute Caroline Lacroix as his mistress in 1899 when he was 65 years old. They remained together until Leopold's death the following decade. She received numerous presents, vast sums of money, estates, and the high title of Baroness de Vaughan from Leopold. 5 days before he passed away, she and Leopold discreetly wed in a religious ceremony. According to Belgian law, their marriage was nullified because they didn't hold a civil ceremony. Leopold was heir to the throne from birth because his older brother, the former Crown Prince Louis Philippe, had passed away the year before. Leopold was made a sub-lieutenant in the army when he was 9 years old and given the title of Duke of Brabant. By the time of his ascension in 1865, he had attained the rank of lieutenant general while serving in the army. When Leopold reached the age of majority in 1855, he joined the Belgian Senate. His public career officially began. He actively participated in Senate proceedings, especially those pertaining to the growth of Belgium and its trade, and he started to promote Belgium's colonial expansion. Between 1858 and 1865, Leopold made numerous trips overseas, stopping in places like Egypt, India, China, and nations along the African Mediterranean coast. Leopold took the oath of office on December 17, 1865 at the age of 30, after the death of his father on December 10th. There's really nothing left for us kings except money, Leopold famously complained to German Emperor William II while witnessing a procession in Berlin. The royal purse would come to dominate Leopold's existence. At a time when the great European scramble for Africa was in full swing, Leopold quickly concluded that the greatest way to amass a fortune would be by founding an African colony. More than 80% of Africa south of the Sahara was ruled by native chiefs or monarchs in 1870. Nearly all of it had become European colonies, protectorates, or regions governed by white settlers 40 years later. Leopold ordered a vast number of construction projects, including public works, urban projects, and buildings, mostly with the money he made from exploiting the Congo Free State. Because of these undertakings, he became to be known as the Builder King. The Hippodrome Wellington Racetrack, the Royal Galleries, and Maria Hendrika Park in Ostend, the Royal Museum for Central Africa and its surrounding park in Tervuren were among his projects. He also built a lot of private properties for himself, both inside and outside of Belgium, in addition to his public works. He created the Royal Greenhouses, the Japanese Tower, and the Chinese Pavilion next to the palace, in addition to enlarging the grounds of the Royal Castle of Laeken, now the museums of the Far East. In the Ardennes, his holdings included the Chateau of Ardennes as well as 17,000 acres of forested and agricultural territory. Leopold did not want his daughters, each of whom was married to a foreign prince, to inherit the collection of estates, lands, and historical structures he had amassed privately. He established the Royal Trust in 1900 and transferred the majority of his estates to Belgium. He also made arrangements for the royal family to continue utilizing these holdings following his passing. Belgian King Leopold II ruthlessly seized control of the African continent on February 5, 1885, establishing the Congo Free State as a result. Leopold privately held the Congo rather than ruling it as a colony, as other European powers did throughout Africa. Leopold used money that the Belgian government lent to him to fund development initiatives. The people of the Congo, a vast area of Central Africa, were to be introduced to civilization, according to the king's professed mission. However, Leopold's rule over the Congo Free State is well known for its cruelty. To personally enrich Leopold, the Congolese were made to toil for valuable resources like rubber and ivory. Various estimates indicate that punishment and malnutrition killed roughly half of the Congolese people. Many more people endured torture and illness. Many of those who were not slain suffered from having a hand or foot amputated as a form of punishment. These abuses did not go unchallenged by the Congolese people. Leopold oversaw the ruthless suppression of several uprisings. Many Europeans spoke out against these injustices as the truth and misery in the Congo Free State came to light. Leopold was compelled to put an end to violations of human rights in the Congo Free State. International pressure compelled the king to hand over the Congo Free State to Belgium in 1908. Up until the Democratic Republic of Congo's independence in 1960, the newly titled Belgian Congo remained a colony. King Leopold began his pursuit of money by taking advantage of the ivory trade, and when that market dried up, he changed his focus to collecting rubber plant sap. The people were forced to work and made into slaves. The loss of a hand was the punishment for not meeting the rubber quota. King Leopold's own wealth was estimated to be worth between $100 and $500 million, making him one of the richest men in the world and giving him the resources to construct beautiful structures in Brussels, Antwerp, and Ostend. It has been calculated that between 2 and 15 million Congolese people died as a result of King Leopold's imperial ambitions. International disapproval of Leopold's rule grew and became more sustained thanks to works like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which was first published as a 3-part series in Blackwood's magazine in 1899, and was based on Conrad's experiences as a steam captain on the Congo River 12 years earlier. The British Crown appointed Roger Casement as their counsel to conduct an investigation into the situation after hearing accounts of egregious exploitation and extensive violations of human rights. The Casement Report, which described the many injustices committed under Leopold's rule, was the result of his extensive travels and interviews in the area. When the report was made public, a massive verbal battle followed. The Congo Reform Association, the first large-scale human rights campaign, was established in Britain by former shipping clerk E.D. Morrill, with Casement's assistance. Supporters included American author Mark Twain, who used many of Leopold's own words against him in his biting political satire, Monarch Leopold's Soliloquy, in which the king claims that introducing Christianity to the people overcomes a little famine. In his 1908 novel, The Crime on the Congo, which he wrote to support the efforts of the Congo Reform Association, author Arthur Conan Doyle also criticized the rubber regime. Doyle compared Leopold's control to British rule in Nigeria, contending that decent leaders of primitive peoples must put their elevation above how much can be taken from them. Many of King Leopold's policies, including those concerning colonial monopolies and forced labor, were informed by Dutch practice in the East Indies. As Hochschild explains in King Leopold's Ghost, Germany, France, and Portugal also used similar forms of forced labor in their own colonies where natural rubber was found. The Belgian parliament forced the monarch to hand over the Congo Free State to Belgium in 1908 due to international pressure and domestic opposition from the Catholic Party, Progressive Liberals, and the Labour Party. The agreement that resulted in the handover cost Belgium a whopping 215.5 million francs. The money was used to pay off the Congo Free State's debt, pay off its bondholders, and pay 45.5 million for Leopold's favorite building projects in Belgium, as well as a $50 million personal payout to him. A colony of Belgium, governed by parliament, was created out of the Congo Free State. During his tenure as the leader of his own private colony, Leopold went to considerable efforts to hide any potential proof of misconduct. He instructed his aide, even after the Congo had been seized from him, to set the entire archive of the Congo Free State ablaze. Leopold II passed away in Laeken on December 17, 1909, and his nephew Albert I, who was the son of Leopold's brother Philippe, Count of Flanders, succeeded him as the King of Belgium. The crowd's displeasure with his authority in the Congo manifested itself in the form of booing directed towards his burial procession. The reign of King Leopold, which lasted exactly 44 years, is still the longest in the history of Belgium. He was laid to rest in the royal vault that was located in the Church of Our Lady of Laeken. Leopold's lack of popularity with his own people towards the end of his life had much less to do with the decisions he made in Africa than it did with how he lived his own life. He was unable to speak proper Dutch, which is the native language of more than half of Belgium's citizens. He spent the long winters in luxurious quarters on the French Riviera, and was estranged from 2 of his 3 daughters. He spoke disdainfully of the small size of Belgium. Furthermore, it was common knowledge that he had a thing for young women, and when he was 65 years old, he began an affair with a young woman who had been a prostitute. This union resulted in the birth of 2 more children from him. In the history of colonialism, King Leopold represented the epitome of European greed and disregard for non-European lives. Under the guise of civilizing missions, rulers like the King of Belgium have exploited every corner of the African continent. Leopold's reign has ravaged the Congo and destabilized the lives of the local natives, who were forced to toil under the rubber regime just so the king could afford his affluent life made of decadent palaces and prostitutes. After his death in 1909, the Congo continued to suffer in the hands of the Belgian state. It wasn't until 1960 that the people of the Congo were allowed to experiment with self-governance and self-determination. Even after the independence of the Congo in the 60s, Belgium continued to exercise a considerable amount of influence in the Congo. The Belgians facilitated the ascent of dictator Mobutu Sese Seko as a way to secure continued access to Congo's natural resources. King Leopold is long gone, but as long as Western nations continue to covert Congo's mineral resources, the ghost of the brutal royal tyrant will haunt the African nation.